Welcome to the Data Scientist Podcast with Dr. Stylianos Kampakis. Dr. Kampakis is a data scientist, statistician, and blockchain expert with a mission to educate the public about the wonderful capabilities of technologies like AI, data science, and DLTs. These technologies have the potential to transform the world, the economy, and our lives. However, there is too much misinformation around tech, and so most people are just confused about what is true and what is not. Whether you are a CEO, an entrepreneur, or just an enthusiast, the Data Scientist Podcast helps you separate reality from hype.
Hi everyone. In this episode, I'm going to talk about how artificial intelligence is going to impact the economy. So I believe this is a very important subject, and you realize the importance of it when you Google AI economy and you end up with more than 400 million results. And the reason that we see so many results is because AI is disrupting many things in society and the economy as we speak, and everyone expects that it's going to disrupt more and more the way we live our lives, the way we conduct business. And so there's very high interest from anyone, from individuals, from workers, from professionals to corporations and governments. There's very high interest in trying to figure out what the future is going to look like, what AI will look like in 5 or 10 years, and how this is going to affect our lives. And I was recently reading about the topic. I was trying to see the viewpoints of scholars, of companies, of consultancies, of experts. And I was recently, and I started writing my thoughts. They're going to be published on my blog, The Data Scientist, in the near future. But I also wanted to talk about this topic on this podcast. I wanted to share some thoughts with you. Something which clearly stands out, at least in my opinion, is that most of the black consultancies like McKinsey or PwC that release reports on how AI is going to affect the economy, they're very much focused on automation. So they're like, okay, there are, these parts of the economy that can be easily automated. And if we automate this, then, GDP is going to increase by X. And the predictions are always optimistic. Like McKinsey says that the annual productivity increase will be 1.2% each year for the next 10, 20 years or whatever. And PwC says that by 2030, the UK will have seen an increase in its GDP by 5%, coming as a direct result of artificial intelligence. And that's all good. Automation is an important area of application. However, I believe that talking only about automation really misses the point, because AI is not just about automation. I just believe that automation is one of the cases where it's actually easier to understand and predict what is going to happen, and this is why so many companies are talking about it. I think autonomous vehicles are the best example. If Tesla or BMW or some other company, they figure out a way to create really autonomous vehicles, and which is going to happen eventually in the next few years. And then if society really accepts that autonomous vehicles can be safer than human drivers, then we will probably see the complete elimination of the human driver as a job from the marketplace. And if we assume that drivers are automated, then we can also assume that the cars and trucks, they can work 24/7, there will be less accidents. So we can get various financial metrics around the cost of accidents, the improvements in performance by having trucks be working 24/7, etc. And then we can see how this is going to affect the GDP. So that's great. But this kind of analysis misses the point that AI is very disruptive. The algorithms created, the machine learning algorithms, AI algorithms, their general purpose, which means they can be applied in many different problems, and they're easier and easier to access. So my opinion is that what we're going to witness is AI being disruptive in the economy, but in many ways, kind of disruption we will see might not be directly positive or negative, and it may not be easy to predict at this stage. So this might sound a bit cryptic, but I think the best example of what I'm trying to say is the internet. Okay, so think about the internet. Like before the internet era, everyone would make predictions about, what kind of new products and services we would see. And obviously some of these predictions led to the dot-com bubble, led to completely wrong expectations. But the internet, that's clear now, it has transformed both the economy and society. So let's say that I was gonna tell you before the internet really took off and before smartphones and all that, I was gonna tell you that, once the internet takes off, it will be possible to buy stuff online. Nothing weird about that, right? You'd say, yeah, that's totally cool. But what if I told you that Amazon would be the biggest retailer in the world and it would be an AI first company that would threaten brick and mortar stores? Now, what if I told you this? And also, what if I told you that any individual in the world could become an entrepreneur simply by promoting products on their Instagram account, on something called social media? And everyone is going to be on social media and people will communicate through social media, right? So no one would have been able to predict this at that point in time. And this has obviously created multiple effects, right? On the corporate level, I'm talking about Amazon and, retailers trying to figure out all kinds of approaches to basically work with this new trend. And also we've seen many individuals who've made lots of money by starting their own businesses from the internet and by promoting themselves and their businesses from their Instagram accounts. So we're talking about the creation of new types of careers. Yeah. So the internet did not bring, let's say, a single change in this regard in the promotion of products and services and retail, but it brought many changes. And also, some of the things we're seeing now, like, being an influencer on Instagram, that couldn't happen 20 years ago. And then maybe in a few years, we're going to see some other trends emerging. So I believe we're going to see something very similar with AI. And as AI becomes more and more accessible, I believe it might be difficult to predict the exact ways through which it's going to affect the economy, because many of the interesting applications might just come out of nowhere, and experts like AI experts or analysts might really these applications might not be visible to the experts. So what I mean by that is, let's say that you're in some kind of obscure industry, like a not very popular industry or whatever. If you have easy access to AI services, you can use these services to, automate some of your processes, make predictions or whatever, and potentially disrupt your industry. And we might see, some companies in various niches come up with some great solutions based around AI, which hadn't been predicted, which no one could predict. That's similar to how Amazon basically disrupted retail, right? So they took it one step further by inventing a new business model. So this is something which for me is very exciting. And something else which is also very intriguing is I was reading a summary on The Gradient, a very nice article about a summary of a conference on the economics of AI that took place in 2017. The article, if you want to read it on The Gradient, is called The Economics of AI Today. And some of the research that was summarized in this article essentially says that the changes that are going to take place might not be outright positive or negative. So, for example, AI might create some new jobs while destroying others, or the jobs that it's going to create might either be very highly technical jobs, like data scientist, or it might be very low-skilled jobs, like, labeling images on Mechanical Turk so that someone can train a machine learning model. So this means that, for example, the net effect of AI on productivity might act because many people might be displaced from their jobs. The new jobs they take up might not be high productivity jobs. And we might end up with a situation where the AI is actually helping the GDP, but it is hurting productivity, which might be a bit counterintuitive, but it could happen. And in any case, the point is not to try and find out whether this prediction is going to be 100% accurate. The point is to understand that the effect that AI will have on the economy and the society is going to be more complicated than just a singularity event or AI, increasing the GDP or whatever. What I would advise anyone who's interested in this area is to focus not so much on the technology, but focus on the industries, focus on the AI and how they believe they could use it and in what circumstances. And the reason I'm saying this is because many of the things that we're gonna see in the future might not come from the big technology companies like Google or Microsoft or IBM, but what we might see is that the industries, companies themselves, they just take AI into their own hands simply because it's become so accessible, and then they decide how to use it, and they end up with some revolutionary use cases which people outside of those industries would have never guessed. But that's like my opinion. I would be very interested in hearing your opinion. Please drop me a message. Go at the datascientist.com and there's a contact form there if you want to get directly in touch with me, or simply use the chat box. I'd be very interested to hear your opinion. I believe that's a very interesting and important topic, and I'm sure we're going to see lots of research coming out in the next few years, as well, many predictions, speculation, etc. One thing that's certain is that, the future is going to be very exciting. So thank you for being here with me, and I hope to see you again soon.
Thank you for listening. Make sure to visit thedatascientist.com for more content about data science, AI, and blockchain.